Hi, Wildling. Hey, I'm still looking for some more interesting guests on European herbalism and foraging. So if you know anybody that would want to be a guest in my podcast series, please feel free to reach out and contact me through social media, Wild Plant Forager, or through my website, wildplantforager.com. Thank you so much. Welcome to Wild, the podcast for wildlings just like you. Wildlings who want to transform the prevalent plant blindness to collective plant wisdom. My name is Lieve Galle. I've been working as a herbalist and wild plant forager in Belgium since 2002. In those years, I've seen a lot of changes. Working with plants has become more popular, but I've also seen time is running out for our planet. As foragers and herbalists in Europe, sometimes we're dealing with different plant species and different cultural approaches towards plants. In some countries, working with plants is licensed, and in others, it's almost illegal. I believe that together we can learn from one another and be stronger. There is nothing more empowering than connecting wild souls. Together, we can have a greater impact on restoring the ancient link between people and plants. And that's why, for this podcast series, I'm talking to fellow herbalists and foragers in Europe. So if you're ready to find out what you've never been told, but what your soul already knows, welcome to Wild. Welcome, Wildling, to a new episode of the Wild podcast. And today on Wild, I'm joined by Eleni Bourou. She's a pharmacist, herbalist, and plant storyteller from Greece, whose work moves between the clinical and the intuitive, the ancestral and the contemporary. For the past 15 years, Eleni has cultivated a unique practice rooted in growing, foraging, and transforming plants into remedies, but also into experiences that guide people back to their bodies and the land. Coming from a family of both Western-trained and traditional healers, Eleni's path explores the tensions and the bridges between biomedical frameworks and holistic traditions. She draws from a deep education in phytotherapy as well as a lived experience, poetic, ritual, and community care. Through workshops, consultations, and collaborations across Europe, Eleni invites us into a more embodied, relational way of healing. Eleni, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here, Lieve. Always a pleasure to meet other fellow practitioners.
Yes, absolutely. So, how did your love for plants get started? How did you become a herbalist? When did that idea started and grow?
I guess I had a connection with plants since I was a child, from my childhood. I tend to believe that all children like to put their hands in the dirt and play with plants and trees. Maybe that's not 100% true, given that a lot of the children grow up in the concrete cities most of us live these days. And of course, it depends on the call and the character of each person. But yeah, I tend to believe we are inherently drawn to the plants somehow. Maybe not all of us, but at least I was drawn. I was playing with the trees, hiding in the bushes, making dance, chewing on leaves, like, oleander. Ooh, that's bitter. Let's
Ooh.
next time. Yes. So all that, and also like I was born in a rural area. Then around the age of 3, we moved to the city. But I remember in my neighborhood a lot of empty lots that were full of daisies and poppies, and we would play there. Of course, most if not all of these lots are now built with high blocks of flats. The neighborhood has changed a lot. But yeah, I guess that was the beginning. It evolved through the years. An important moment was when I was at the university school, at the pharmacy school. I was kind of thinking of dropping out at the point, thinking that maybe I would like to follow a more artistic path. But one day we had a class, a pharmacognosy class that was more hands-on. We had a hands-on test, and we were given a tray of dried plants, asked to like ID them, like say what plant was what. And yeah, at that moment, I was like enthusiastic about the test. Everyone else in the room was like, what is this? I was very enthusiastic. At that moment, I realized that was my entry back to the school and my path for the future. Of course, that was one of the moments. There were many moments, and of course, it's also an evolving practice. For example, I've been like harvesting herbs that are abundant in my region since before I got into the university school. I had this epiphany during the pharmacognosy test. But yeah, there's different moments that make the big picture. But I would say like it spans from childhood to like later years, and it still
Yes.
evolves.
Okay, so childhood and then a few light bulb moments like the one that you just mentioned. I'm very surprised that you must be the first guest that I have telling me about eating toxic oleander. I'm probably spitting it out again because it was so bitter. Yes.
It was
Interesting.
everywhere. It still is because it's a plant they use a lot for fencing protection, like in big highways. They use it in the
All
middle of the
right.
highway to
Okay.
like divide the two different directions. It's very common, and also like landscape because it's hardy. So you can meet oleanders all around.
So, and also I think what you mentioned about growing up and playing and roaming around in spaces that were wild and green and that now have buildings on them. I think this a lot of people have the same story. I mean, if I go back to my old neighborhood or my husband or yes, so many buildings are built in spaces where it used to be green. And I'm always wondering, how cool would it be if next generations could tell the opposite? Like, oh, there used to be buildings here, but now there's this lovely green space. And I really wonder if that's ever going to happen. But it's a nice idea to think about the legacy that we leave for our children, of course. Yes.
Plants want to take over these places because you see them popping out the concrete. I've even seen like it's a
Yes.
common thing to see plants in the city coming out of walls and the concrete, and I'm like amazed every time I meet them. Wow, how has the seeds, how has this wild garlic managed to come out this concrete corner? So this might be also inspiration for people to make more like gardens and allotment projects in the cities. Mm.
Yes. Yes. If you look like pictures that are made by drones of Chernobyl, where really nature just took over and it goes rather quickly, as a matter of fact. And it's very inspiring to see how easy that nature grows back and takes back. It's very nice to see. Yes. So I'm wondering. So your journey intertwines formal pharmaceutical training and traditional herbal practices. So, how do these two paths come together for you? And yes, what is the added value of having a background in both? Yes, both areas.
I often say this story of when I started working in a pharmacy and realized there were people coming to the counter. I was the person behind the counter.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized they didn't know exactly how the medicine they were getting were working in their body, what they were
Mm-hmm.
doing to their body. And also I realized that they were very alienated from their bodies. I sometimes I would ask, like they would say, I have pain, give me something for the pain. I was like, where is the pain? What type of pain? Can you describe it? And they couldn't. They couldn't even point. So I was like, this is shocking. And there should, like, something must be done about it. This was the moment I realized I needed to involve in community projects, workshops, and education, like some sharing of knowledge. And of course, at that point, like the knowledge I had was coming mainly from the mainstream way, the now prominent way, which is like Western education way through books and through schools. But I was also at that point following and meeting and practicing also in another level, which was more in conversation with the plants and tradition, because I was always very interested and involved in this part that draws a lot from feminist theory also, and decolonial theory, where a lot of the people's knowledge were stolen or lost.
Mm-hmm.
But I prefer stolen because it wasn't lost, is just neutral, but it was erased and stolen. So reclaiming back this knowledge and sharing was a major issue for me. So in this direction of thought, when we started doing some community projects, the first years the approach was kind of anthropocentric. Like we would talk about plants for each system of the body, blah. But then I started thinking that I don't like this approach. I want plants to be in the center. So the second year we would do like plant families, etc. Then I wasn't happy about cognition and learning, name dropping, and a lot of people coming to the workshops were very stressed about, oh, how am I going to remember all that? Like for the learning process. Then I realized intuition and play should come more in the picture. Of course, I've met in some, mainly in the radical herbalism conference that was organized in the past in the UK by a team of wonderful people, herbalists. So I met some people there that inspired me to like take this path, kind of try to take some distance from my education in the Western medicine context and try to learn more from the plants in an intuitive way. One of these mentors was a guest in one of your previous podcasts, Nikki Darrell. This is my teacher and mentor. And yeah, it sort of evolved this way. Of course, I realized that it's impossible to delete from my head what I've learned within the Western medicine context.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know that certain plants have certain constituents and properties, and I cannot delete that from my head. I cannot approach the plants as a tabula rasa, as an empty board, like we say. But I'm conscious in my approach that nowadays I try to learn from the
Mm-hmm.
plants and approach them in a respectful way, and also talk about it, spread this ethics through the educational work I do.
That's interesting what you were saying, because I remember after I had just graduated in herbalism, I was looking at the plants and I was seeing just constituents. And what I actually did is blindfolding myself and sit with the plants rather than, because the visual stimuli for me was thinking in constituents. And so I really started to touch the plant and smell it and, use the other senses. So, yes, and it's very interesting to do that because constituents is only one way of looking at the plants, and it's a diaphragm with a lot of possible perspectives, and it's such enriching thing to have to try to take all different viewpoints and see the plant in from a different perspective. So yes, thank you for sharing that. Yes.
Often people tell me, "Oh, you have studied pharmacy. I feel safer when I know that." Blah blah blah. But to me, um, knowing the constituents doesn't make me. This is not what makes me a better herbalist, because a herbalist that is not sensorially connected with the plant, that is dangerous. Not one that doesn't know the constituents, because the other day I was in a tour. I just came back from a tour up north in the mountains of northern Greece, where we will take people from abroad to get to know the mushrooms and the plants of the area. And I was telling them I was harvesting some plantain, and there were it's a spear-like plant, right? But
Mm-hmm.
around it there were many other spears, like grass, other stuff. So it was my touch, because I've touched it many times, that made me harvest fast and with certainty, with confidence, because I
Yes.
knew that the other ones around it that looked very much alike have another texture, feel different when I touch them and cut them. So that is safety. Like what makes this part of harvesting safe, and at this point making a quality preparation, knowing the constituent doesn't add to the
Mm-hmm.
practice.
That's a
Of
beautiful
course,
illustration of how important the hands-on work really is.
yeah, I was thinking of it because I realized I can do it almost with closed eyes, almost intimacy. Like I've met this plant so many times, I've touched it so many times, so I'm confident when I meet it.
You actually know the plant as good as if as a close family member. That's the kind of relation that's the way it feels for me at least.
Yes, totally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not all the plants, but the ones I've worked a lot with, the ones I've
Yes.
met a lot of the times. So I'm also trying to tell people, because when we're out in the field, they might start asking about every plant around. And I try to tell. And also another common question is like, what is this plant? What does it do? So I try to tell them that there's no use of just like being out in the field and doing endless name dropping, telling them names, because they're not going to remember it. And also, it's not right to approach a plant with an extractive attitude. Like if I mean leave
Mm-hmm.
and think what leave has to give me, what's the use of leave? That's not the right way of building a relationship.
Yeah.
The way we go is like, hello, hi, I'm trying to like feel your vibe, understand your attitude, see if we're vibing, have a conversation. And it's the same with plants. So I encourage people, and same goes with me. Like, of course, sometimes I'm like, what is this? What is this? But I focus on the plants I'm drawn to, the
Mm-hmm.
plants I work with. We have a relationship. I don't try like, it's like you're in a party trying to meet everyone. Like it's too much, at least for me, but I think it's too much for everybody. So yeah.
Yes, I agree. And the more people I speak to, I think the herbs that we really work with, like on a daily basis, are like oftentimes just a handful of herbs. And it's like friends. You don't need 100 friends. If you have 5 friends, you're a very rich person, you know? So, yes, and it's really spot on what you say. Yes, I really like how you're approaching plants the same way that you're approaching people. You're not trying to extract a certain thing from it, but rather just, it's not all. It's also not a one-way direction thing. It's really you have to
Reciprocative. It's
exactly,
reciprocative. Yeah. Not it should like
exactly.
it's a model.
Yes,
Reciprocative, not extractive. That's
yes.
a guideline for
Hmm.
building a relationship
Hmm.
with plants. But it's not me like a very well known herbalist, Rosemary Gladster, I think, said that it's better to know 20 plants very well, really well, in depth, because that's not really easy. It
Hmm.
takes years, and most schools are like, learn one or two plants really well each semester. Don't get greedy, like, I need to know this and this. Of course, during the years, you meet more.
Hmm.
But I think like some people want to show off that they have many friends. I think likewise, because there's like a lot of things for any taste. So I think there's herbalists that kind of show off that they work with exotic plants, a lot of plants. It's okay. They have their following, but for my practice, I try to avoid working with a lot of non-endemic plants. It's part of
Hmm.
my ethics. There's a few that I really need to work with sometimes. I try to like because a lot of books are written also. That's another part of our colonial times. A lot of the books are written by US or UK people. So it's a lot of plants that are there, and we might have some different ones. So it's part of the work to find which are the local substitutes and s- yeah, use as little as possible from the exotic plants. I'm very cautious towards people that do market in their practice uh, working with Amazonian plants while they live somewhere else. I'm a little
Hmm.
like, I don't feel very okay with that.
Yes, I agree. And for me, it's been a pleasure to see how the past few years here in Belgium, we have more and more books from Belgian herbalists, because there used to be a lot of translated books that came from either the UK or from the US with even plants that we don't have here locally. So, um, and actually, this is one of the reasons why I started this podcast, because I think if I ask any of my students or any of my colleagues to name 3 internationally known herbalists, they will be either from the US or from the UK. And there are so many interesting and good herbalists on the European continent that nobody ever hears about. And I really wanted to change that and to give like a platform to these people. I don't know why people never heard about herbalists from Sweden or from Germany or from Italy or from why? Why is it like that? It's the traditions in other European countries are at least as valuable as the ones in the UK and the US. And I totally endorse the fact that the English speaking herbalists, the native speaking herbalists are trying and doing their best to keep their knowledge and wisdom alive, which is good and which is I am a supporter of that. But let's not forget about the rest of Europe, right? Yeah.
And the rest of the world, because sometimes during people's
Yes.
work, we will discuss, like people will ask about a plant, we will discuss um, uses, and I'm like, I tend to like underline the fact that I'm a white person living in Greece and I'm trained within this context, and whether in the traditional education system or from the local tradition, I have access to these sources. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
access because I don't speak the language to Asian
Mm-hmm.
ethnobotanical sources. I have access
Mm-hmm.
to what the Westerners have written about that, but I don't have access to the actual people. So sometimes I will tell you a recent example that made an impression, a huge impression to me, because I found out through like some post of a Latin American herbalist on Instagram that bougainvillea, this
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
ornamental plant, it's everywhere in Greece. A lot of my friends have it in their balconies, their gardens, but it's in no book I have any traditional use. And
Yes.
they drink the tea in Latin America.
Ah.
So I was like, wow, how can that not be in any book? And this is proof that there are traditional uses in places we have no access linguistically, let's say, because that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Like, speak
Mm-hmm.
the language to ask the people, because not everything goes into books.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and especially in cultures with more oral traditions. And I'm very fascinated by the use of so-called toxic herbs traditionally, because very often there is a way people prepare them that they they can just take away the toxicity and use the plant medicinally. And I think the Western way of thinking is very black and white. Like, and I really have to explain my students this over and over again. We tend to think a plant is either toxic or edible slash medicinal. But it doesn't work like that. Sometimes they become toxic once they start to flower. Sometimes you can only they reduce the toxicity by cooking them, and sometimes yes, you are just by cooking them, you're damaging all the constituents. So it's very interesting to see the gray zone there. And I think Western the Western way of thinking often has classified certain plants as toxic and not interesting anymore to look any further into. And we're missing probably out on some really important information there because of that black and white thinking.
Of course, and dose is another important
Hmm.
factor when it comes to like safety, toxic or medicinal. The same plant can be medicinal and toxic depending on the dose, which is the
Hmm.
first big lesson I've learned in pharmacy school. And it's an ancient knowledge, like it's in many ancient Greek texts, the pharmacon. Like the same thing can be your poison and your
Hmm.
medicine,
Hmm.
depending on the doses. And like you said very correctly, the method of preparation.
Yeah. So, what I'm wondering, you're in Greece. How is like the basic botanical knowledge of the people in Greece? Do they still know a lot of plants? Can they identify them? Do they still use them on a daily basis, or is this more of just a countryside thing and they don't do it in the cities anymore? How exactly is that?
It's difficult to have all the statistics. I will just talk out of my experience and where I live. I think most of the people, and I'm talking about the people that come to my workshops, my friends, family, the plant walks I do. So these are my statistics, because maybe there's a demographic I don't reach, right? I think a big percentage of the population recognizes the 10 most common species of trees that are around us, like the
Mhm.
pine, the cypress. Then, the other 10 or 20 that are in the city, maybe they don't. And from herbs and greens, again, most of the people do recognize the 10 most common, like, I don't know, like lavender, I don't know, dandelion.
Mhm.
They do. And also, it's common for a lot of people. Their grannies or moms would still harvest horta, which is the greens. A lot of people knew. types of greens that are edible that I didn't know at the beginning of my practice, because I was focusing mainly in medicinal plants. So, of course, they are also medicinal, but they're not like the 15, 20 first you learn. So they were like common people that knew more greens, more relatives of the dandelions with their names, which is now big part like dandelion and its relatives that look alikes. Is a big chapter in the plant walks, because also it happens in central Athens to have a lot of the lookalikes and very little actual dandelion.
Hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, I think I don't. I also have just an idea because I haven't lived abroad. I've traveled, so I just have an idea to make comparisons. I cannot make very absolute comparisons, definitive. So yeah, I think herbs and greens, fruits and vegetables, Greeks are a little closer to them than, let's say, US people. Some of them grow things on the rooftops, their balconies. They would go to the farmer's market every week, so they see like greens and herbs sometimes there. They harvest, yeah, they harvest. Not all of them, but a big part of the population does harvest. And
Okay.
many times, even if they don't know the tree, they have a tree in their yard that someone else, like some relative, grandparents might have planted, and they find out it's this type of tree and it produces fruit, and they collect it. And so they found out in the way the
Okay.
rest. So I think yes, there's a good average.
Hmm. Hmm. And do they still gather greens in the wild? Is that still a thing, or is it more of the older people doing it?
They do. Like in one of the plant walks, I do plant walks on the hills of Athens. And early spring, there was a lot of wild rucola. And in the biggest slope of wild rucola, I went to at the end of the plant walk to harvest some, and it was already harvested, which means they
Yes,
do. They do.
they
I mean,
do it. Okay.
okay, don't take me wrong. I don't think it's the majority of the population. The
Okay.
majority of the population goes to the supermarket. Alienation from the body and nature is a key word in our times.
Mm.
But I think I have because of the fact that each person in the city has some village house, has some connection to some village. A lot of the
Mm.
families do harvest olives and make their own olive oil, at least from the middle of Greece and down, because the olive trees are mainly in the south, not much in the north. So a lot of the families do have connection with the land. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you for sharing. And what about if you want to do some form of herbal education in Greece? Is there like a herbalist school or several herbalist schools, or is it not really formal like that? Or how should I see it?
There's not accredited herbal schools and no state herbalism schools.
Mm.
There's not any post-grad program. There are some pharmacognosy post-grads but they're very recent, about like quality control of herbal products, maybe, or
Ah,
distillation, essential oils that are a little relevant. But it's post-grad programs after pharmacy school. So not really related to herbalism. And
okay.
phytotherapy, when I graduated from the pharmacy school, was an optional class. It wasn't even part of the main body.
Okay.
Phytotherapy and homeopathy were like optional. Part of the main body was pharmacognosy and botany, but that was it. There are schools in Greece, herbalism schools, but they're not accredited. So to me, though I haven't been a student there, from what I've heard and from what I see in the curriculums, Most of them are missing clinical practice. I don't want to like really grade them, but let's say they're not accredited, like high quality accredited by someone schools.
Okay.
And for example, like in the Greek taxing system, there's
Mm-hmm.
tax codes for every profession, and there's not a tax code for herbalists.
We have the same in Belgium. Like,
Some
yeah, I know what you mean by text code. Well, it's not exactly like text code, but it's we call it Nasibel code. If you want to start your own project, you have to take some of the numbers. For me, it's education because people said to me, "Oh, what are you going to take? Are you going to take a florist?" I said, "I'm not a florist. I'm a herbalist.
course.
It's different." So, but yes, I have education and probably a few other things because there is no number for herbalists.
If someone here would think, take the code for alternative therapists,
Mhm.
alternative therapies, but I don't think that's correct, because and it kind of annoys me when people call herbalism and phytotherapy alternative therapies, because they're traditional.
Yes,
They're the oldest.
exactly.
They're not some
Exactly.
with I don't want to like underestimate alternative therapies, huh? But it's like, as a categorization, it's not.
Mhm. Yes, it is traditional medicine and language is important and we should call it's the oldest form of medicine that we know, the herbal medicine. So yes, it's important to see it that way, I think. And also, what about high quality herbal products in Greece? Because you mentioned earlier um, that in the pharmacist education, there was a thing about, having a quality control on herbal products. So how is that in Greece? Is it easy to have access to high quality herbal products, or where can you buy them? Can you buy them in the pharmacists, or do you have to go somewhere else?
What is your perception of high quality herbal products?
Ah, that's a good question. Well, I will try to explain. So, what I see here, so I have my own solar herb dryer. And what I see is that, like, if I dry like red clover flowers, the color is a lot more vibrant than what I buy in the store. Also, than not always, but what I buy in some pharmacies, what I buy in some herbal stores, what I buy in some organic stores. We have a few good brands, but I think a lot of the herbs that are sold, well, it really depends on where you buy them, but a lot of the herbs that are sold are like, sometimes it's like dried lemon balm, and it doesn't even smell like lemon balm anymore. Or lemon balm that I can really taste. Okay, they harvested this after it was flowering, so the constituents are different. So in Belgium, it really depends on where you buy them. And I think when it comes to like tinctures, or yes, there is a good access. But when it comes to the basic things like really dried herbs, it's more difficult here. So yeah.
I ask because in my mind there's a war going on, but I'll finish with that. I won't start with the war. For some people, for example, I don't own a pharmacy. I've never owned one. I've worked in pharmacies. So for the pharmacy owner, the
Mhm.
herbal high quality herbal product is a big brand like Dr. Vogel, Solgar. That's high quality herbal product, a certified one that has been under clinical trials, lab tests, or all that, and it's standardized. It says
Mhm.
that it has 50 milligram of hypericin.
Yes.
So that's an ongoing discussion. Meanwhile, we have grocery stores that sell chamomile that someone has harvested. It's not certified or tested, and people can go to the market and buy it. So if you ask me as a
Okay.
herbalist, I would say something a grandma has harvested is more likely to be organic and good for your body if you take the simple than taking a pill. Not that it
Yes.
won't help you,
Yes.
but for me,
Hmm.
it's more of a Western medicine
Yeah.
approach to
Yeah.
herbalism. And like I
Yeah.
said,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
repeating because I'm not a friend of dogma. I don't want everyone to adopt my ethics. But these are my ethics.
Hmm.
So there can be a following that is more comfortable with this type of
Hmm.
green living and health. But my herbal education is like it's more holistic and wholesome if you can take the whole plant or things that are
Yes.
crafted preparations from fresh and freshly
Hmm.
dried
Hmm.
plants. Most of the
Yes.
preparations I make are these. So for me, it comes to this question where I can source. Of course, for me, it's like I try to harvest or grow and make most of the things I need myself. But the few that I can't, I try to have connections to growers of stuff
Hmm.
that I might need. A problem is that some of the stuff I need are not grown by anyone at the moment. So I'm always seeking new collaborations to find people that would be
Okay.
up like people that live have their own farms outside the city and would be up growing echinacea for me because that's
Hmm.
always
Hmm.
something that I don't have enough. And it's not I cannot well harvest it where I am. So and sometimes I I I might harvest chamomile, but I don't harvest that much, so I might need more.
Yes.
So now we come to like high quality. If I can go to the market and find stuff, sometimes they're seasonally harvested stuff that you can tell that they're fresh. Other
Hmm.
times, because there's an area in Athens market that has all the herbs and spices. They're on the same street. So if you ever come, you can check yourself. I mean, there are herb stores, usually tea stores that do have herbs as well. There are other stores in other areas, but there's this one street in the center of Athens that has all the herb and spices stores, and it's a good lesson to go there try to buy calendula, for example. And because
Hmm.
it's not always seasonally or very recently or locally harvested, and it has been ordered from some supplier abroad,
Hmm.
even if it's not really old, it's white or yellowish. Like the example you gave with lemon balm. Again, this is something I show to the people in my workshops, like real calendula, freshly
Yes.
harvested.
Bright, bright colored.
If I bring the one from the store because I didn't have enough, I've brought it from the trip now. I bought some, and it was. I was trying to decide if which one to use. One was white yellow. The other one was yellow with some orange hues.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, I won't throw it away. I'll drink it maybe because it. I think it's also very photosensitive, so it loses the color very fast. I
Hmm.
don't think it was useless 100%. I kept it to drink tea myself, but certainly it's not something I will give to any client or I would use in any workshop. And this is something that is sold in the central market in the same shop that they have high quality herb of another kind. It
Yes.
has to do with the supplier. So you can find some high quality, but not all of it is high quality. And it has to do with the fact that there's other Balkan countries that do have bigger production, so they import. And if a plant doesn't have a lot of demand, if not a
Hmm.
lot of people buy it, only me buys it, I'll buy something old. So it won't be high quality. So it's very important to be in a position of realizing the quality of the herb. That's very
Okay.
important. When I started, like 20 years ago, I would read about a plant that I've never met, and I would go get it. And sometimes I didn't even check if I should get the root or the leaf. And I needed the root, and they gave me leaf at the store. they would totally jump me, or it would be really, really old, but I couldn't understand it at that point because I haven't worked with the plant that much. So I would say it can be sloppy. You should have an understanding.
I think on the other hand, it's if you tell me that you can buy like a bag of chamomile at in the market or even in the supermarket, this is for me in Belgian context, it's unheard of. Maybe in some more ethnical markets like in Brussels, but yeah, it's and especially it's in supermarkets. What they do have in the supermarkets here is like a chamomile tea, which is in tea bags, and it's like yeah, it's just dust really with probably sugar crystals in it and whatever. But it's interesting to know that people even so there is a demand. There is a demand.
Every
If you
supermarket has the big brands of tea bags too, but they do have a lot of them do have other local brands that have tea bags of local herbs, and
Mm,
a lot of them do have loose herbs
okay.
in bags also. They're not
Okay.
always very good quality. And coming back to quality and the war I mentioned at the beginning, because I said
Hmm.
I'll finish with this war. The real war is certifications. Like big pharma can say it's not okay to sell this chamomile if it's not approved. I think it's common. This war of like also companies wanting to sell this whole discussion about traditional use. So in the European Union, I think there was this thing that you can dispense in a pharmacy or give for pharmaceutical reasons herbs that have been used for 100 years traditionally for a condition. Yeah, I think big pharma can get really serious, stop people from freely using certain stuff. They don't want it yet. And still, because of the fact that, like, if you don't say it's medicinal, it's okay. So people can consume it.
Ah,
So we have this gray area that gives a lot of freedom yet, like what is
yes.
medicinal, what is food. So I think like food grade, like chamomile can be in this food grade category beverage, which is pretty safe as many other herbs. They're okay with it.
And how is the legal framework in Greece when it comes to practicing herbalism? We've talked about schooling, but like, can you see clients? Can you practice? Can you?
It's again gray area because I would be an alternative therapist in this context. But
Yes, yes.
because like we said, I don't have like a certain code. But me, the way I see my practice, even though I don't have a pharmacy, it's like I do primary care. Like if I was in a pharmacy, it's just that I won't dispense drugs, big pharma drugs. I'm a clinical herbalist. I will dispense compounding. Compounding is like mm, when a pharmacist prepares custom-made medications for individual
Hmm.
patients, offering formulations not commercially available. So this is the context within which I operate, and I think that they cannot come after me. It's a gray area, I think, but I think I'm protected from this.
Yes. And I'm wondering if there are a lot of other people just like you that don't have the pharmacist background.
Up to a point, I was very sad that there wasn't a big herbalist community. I did all my peers were in the UK and the US and Ireland,
Hmm. Hmm.
and through like some herbalist meetings that were facilitated by Jen, I met some other European herbalists like in France, Poland, but all these people have met in programs in the UK and Ireland again. I didn't know a lot of herbalists. I knew a couple of people that have studied abroad, but we're working more with the land, like permaculture. Like one very
Hmm.
close friend of mine that we started my first project some years ago is now just designing permacultural projects. And I think it's because, there wasn't a big community, but lately I've been finding on Insta and online new people I didn't know that have like studied either abroad or in these new schools that are in Athens, like in different cities. It's getting bigger, and in my mind, like a very persistent idea that I want to realize in the following years is doing something like a festival or get together, to
That
create
would
this,
be great.
to
That
create
would be
community.
really great.
Community for me is very important. But I don't know. What like we haven't had discussions about what is the tax numbers and all that. Because again, as a person, I believe legal frame can be important, but going back to this whole discussion about certification, there's been a lot of scandals, like biofood scandals, like a lot of farms that had bio certifications and they weren't real. So to me, at the
Mm.
end of the day, it comes to trust. It all
Yes.
comes to relations of trust. It can be like an obsolete, an absurd concept in the context of the modern city, the way we live in the modern city. But I want to live like that, and I want the people, like, this is why first and foremost I can say I'm an artist, but in the herbalism context, I want to stress that I'm a community herbalist, and that
Mm-hmm.
means
Mm-hmm.
I relations of trust are very important for me in many different levels. So I don't want it to be impersonal. Like many things I do in my life. Now we're talking about this, so people trust me again in many different levels. Trust me because I try to have an affirmative, informed, inclusive, trauma-informed decolonial practice. That they also trust me in the way I work with plants. That I will ask for consent. I will take into consideration possible pollution and contamination factors where I harvest, that I process consciously and with love, with intention, because that's also important. Like
Mm-hmm.
in our modern context, capitalistic context, medicine is something produced in a factory. But in the traditional medicine making I practice, I might have a very stressful week and I have to create space to go and see a person that comes for a consultation or prepare a remedy with an open heart, leaving my stress, my sadness,
Yes.
and all negative feelings out of the door, because
Mm-hmm.
I won't create medicine if I bring them with me in the room where I make the formula, which is big. And most people don't really get it, because you need extra time to go to this place where you have an open heart and all the good vibes to infuse into the remedy, all the love, because it's a work of love.
Yes.
And this is
Yes.
why sometimes I'm like, what word should I use? Art, craft, practice, preparation. It's all that. It's each and
Mm-hmm.
all.
Yes, and it's beautiful how you frame that the modern medicines are made in factories and with a lot of machines, and the herbalist that makes it with love and with intention. That is so well said. Yes.
Many people say these stories that how a person can, like, we need certifications because we cannot let anyone go harvest and put something in oil without knowing what it takes and sell it in a market. And
Hmm.
yeah, I agree that this could possibly be dangerous, but a lot of things in our lives need analytical thought and takes responsibility from both sides.
Hmm.
So I'm not up for this culture of protection through certifying everything, because that
Yes.
also has some dangerous and sloppy areas, I would say.
Mhm. Mhm.
Having everything
Yes.
control can banish forever traditional knowledge. Like it can lead all this knowledge in the hands of the big pharma again. Only like a green version of the green of the big pharma.
Yes, it's I think it's true. Yes. I'm wondering if you would like to share with us some like a typically Greek herbal tradition, or it could be like a dish that they are traditionally making with wild greens, or is it like some maybe for certain times at year that you use certain plants in a ceremony, or is there anything like that you'd like to share with us?
Um, we were having a discussion because I have a lot of herbalist friends from other countries, and we're having a similar discussion. And a lot of the preparations are, I mean, I cannot tell you it's green spy that is a thing, a staple in Greece, because green spies are all over the Balkans, I think. It's not a Greek thing. A lot of people prepare St. John's wort oil. It's the time that time of the year where people will start preparing it and believe in that for everything. But that's also a common thing all around Europe, and I think even other places of the world. So a lot of the staples are kind of common.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there is, if I have to, are you familiar with the nine herbs charm? Is a
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
naming some of the most important plants and their properties and their virtues. So there's a similar traditional rhyming poem, let's say, in the island of Creta, called Sarandavotano, which means 40 herbs. Um,
40. Wow.
yeah, it names 40 herbs. It starts like, if you're not feeling well, go find take this other thing. And it's a lot from very well-known
Wow.
plants like lemon and orange and rose geranium to other that are also common, like poppy. But the way it's named in this rhyme, in this madinada, it's a traditional rhyming song of the area. It calls for some ethnobotany research, and it fascinates me because you know how in different areas of the same geographical regions they call the same plant different names. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you are from the city, you know the very mainstream name. And then the other day I was harvesting some elderflower up north, and there was a granny that passed by me and was called it somewhere else. We call it sabuco. It sounds like the Latin name, and she called it vuza. Then I looked it up, ethnobotany research again, and it's part of a Vlach dialect. It's Romanian dialect that they speak
Wow.
in the north of Greece. So that's where like herbs and people and history of the people, moving of the people in the same geographical area, and their plants mingle, intertwine, and I find it very fascinating because I also work
It
with
is very
words.
fascinating. Yes.
So yes, they have different words, and in this Cretan rhyming Madinava, they had this word for poppy that I had to look for a week. And when I found it, I was really happy because it was like a magical quest. But this song, they would tell it to someone that was ill, but also midwives. It was something that a mother would teach a daughter, not only the song, but also where to find these herbs and harvest them. And they used to say,
Mm.
you should harvest these herbs from places where a rooster won't be heard crowing, where you cannot hear
Oh,
the morning rooster. Like, so it's a faraway place. It's a very nice way of describing. Like I say, I
Yes.
harvest my plants above 1,200 meters, but this is more to the point. Like you go far. You go far from where people put their hands on because they do nasty things, these people. Nowadays, they spray with pesticides and other nasty stuff. So you go far away and you harvest there. So mother to daughter would pass this song and the knowledge of harvesting. And also a lot of midwives will recite this when a newborn was coming, and use some of the herbs to like bathe the baby in. And it had pragmatical uses, this Randavotano, but also more spiritual. That's why I'm mentioning the newborn and all that. So I'm not from Creta, but yeah, I think a lot of our herbs and the preparations are common in the Balkans and in the Anatolian region, because the
Mhm.
Greek flora has this characteristic that part of it is like Balkan and European, but towards the islands, it starts being more Turkish, more Anatolian similarities when it comes to plants. So
Uh-huh.
it's fascinating. Up north, we have like the southest point you can find betulas, for example, up north. And then they disappear and it changes completely. And on the islands, we have more like Turkish and Anatolian flora. And a lot of things that are prepared there. The use of spices and herbs draw traditions more from there. But a lot are common. When I travel abroad, I usually bring mastic. I try to bring some herbs that are not common throughout Europe because, like I said, I would say 80% of the herbs and uses are common with our neighbors, and not all Europe, but a lot of European countries. The main ones, the 20 main herbs, I mean. So I try to find some staples, some that we're using a lot.
Mhm.
Because of course I can find some like rare herbs that are just endemic, and but these we won't use them because they're rare and we won't harvest them.
Yes. Yes.
I would bring mastic that only grows around here, and it's a resin coming out of a very close relative of the pistachio tree. It has amazing medicinal properties, but also just the smell using it in cooking is amazing. They make a local ice cream here, kaimaki, that uses the mustard, and everyone that tastes it gets addicted. They're like, "Where can we taste it abroad?" And I don't know. I'm like, You have to make your own. Find the recipe and get the mustard from here and make your own." And the second one is mountain tea, siveritis, that you can find in other Balkan countries, but we use it a lot.
Yes, in Belgium, we call it Greek tea. So, yeah, Greek
Uh,
mountain tea. Yeah, so, yeah, Griekse bergthee. Yeah, yes.
this,
And I really love the flavor of that.
and if you ever come, I will show you. It has a different look depending on the mountain that it grows. Like in Creta, very
Ah,
south of Greece, it's very fluffy and fuzzy. From other like northern mountains, it's very thin and fine. It might have like longer and fuzzier leaves, or be more petite and fine, and that it fascinates me. Also a little difference in the aroma. It's the local types, different local types of the same plant.
wow, that's fascinating. Yeah. I was wondering if in Greece you are seeing the consequences of climate change in your work. Do you see, because I can see it in my work when I'm gathering herbs. Um, yeah, sometimes we have very wet years and other years it's very dry, and I can see it influencing the plants. And I can also see that, like, the wild fennel is one plant that I know usually grows in places like Italy and France and Greece and Portugal. But now I see it more and more here in Belgium. And I'm wondering if you're seeing similar things or not.
Of course, of course. I think we can see it everywhere. This pattern of in the Mediterranean, but also other countries nowadays, heat waves, very
Mhm.
warm summers with wildfires, alternating with floods, sudden floods. Like last year, it has rained at Mount Pilio, which is central East Greece. In one day, it poured as much water it pours in Frankfurt or Hamburg a whole year.
Wow.
So it damaged the place. And that same year, if you remember, there were mass floods in some parts of Slovenia, in Italia.
Mhm.
That year, I
Mhm.
traveled in Slovenia, and it happened after we left Poland, because I happen to have friends in all these places, and there were similar patterns, like heat waves, wildfires, and then extreme floods, which is, of course, a sign. It's a pattern that is here to stay. Last year was a very dry year here. People suffered from it. It was 30 degrees Celsius from April. And the usual pattern in Athens, in Attica, the area where I live. But then during summer, I traveled around and I realized that it must have been like that everywhere because it was dry everywhere. So the usual heat wave of more than 40 degrees Celsius, that's like 2 or 3 days, and then it goes down. And next month, maybe another 2 3 days. Last
Mhm.
year, it was constantly 40. Everyone was indoors trying not to move to survive. The people, because it's a very common thing, we have a lot of expats, people from northern countries were in shock.
Mhm.
Um, but the trees were also in shock. Like
Yes.
they were totally confused. Trees that are supposed to flower or fruit during fall were fruiting in summer, late summer. Wherever I went was super dry in like beautiful spots that were springs with alders and plane trees and poplars, and it was dry and different. This year, fortunately, spring has been long, which is never a thing. So I'm really happy. Just imagine that my plant walks, I do them during spring because there's more flowers
Mhm.
on the hills. And also, we live in one of the most extreme areas regarding the temperature. So once the temperature goes up, everything goes dry on the hills, like in a week, from green
Wow.
to dry. So I start February,
Mhm.
mid end, and I finish at end of May. And this year I did till April, and then it seemed that the temperature will go up, but it started raining. It had gray days, rainy days, which makes me really happy because that was also the case around the rest of the country. And it makes me really, really happy, even though the people of the city are the usual grumpy people of the city that were like, oh, another great day. I'm like, don't complain, because if heat comes, you'll be burned and everything will be burned. So be happy with these gray, rainy days.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah, I was really happy to be on the mountain and see that that was also the case there. Though people that I work with the land were saying the exact same story, that the weather gets very weird, like alteration of heavy pouring with super warm days, and the plants being confused. That's a pattern. And
Mhm.
sometimes these patterns destroy the crops of the farmers, because for some fruiting trees and the olive harvest, which is very important for this country, it can damage the harvest. It can be detrimental for the harvest, like sudden flooding or yeah, phenomenons like this.
Mhm.
But I hope this year will be better.
Wow. So if I hear you saying so you're giving your plant walks like between February and May, and then you take like a summer break because it's so
Not
dry?
May, never. Like there was like this
Okay.
kindergarten that would hire me every year to do like walks on a hill in May, and I was like, come on, there's no flowers, and it's nice for children see flowers, colors. The
Yes.
hill was dry. Of course, the other thing is that children, because we call it treasure hunt, so children can find treasures everywhere. Like even if there's no flowers, they can find things like other stuff. And what we do is like sensorial learning. I do the same. Like children, adults, it's sensorial. Like get
Yes.
to know the
Yes.
plants through your senses and your intuition. That's
Hmm.
mainly my gig. So I'm telling you all that to say that by May, no, like it lasts spring for me in the city of Athens, the first greens, because people don't realize in February that it's spring because they still wear a jacket. But
Yes.
to me, it's like it is spring. Don't lose it because my one of the hashtags I use the most is spring too short. Spring too short because uh, it's short. Like we don't have like 4 even seasons. It's mainly
Hmm.
like winter and summer and fall and spring are almost extinct. They're very short. And
Oh,
I'm
okay.
super happy that this year there was longer. That was longer. It lasted longer. This spring season. It's rarely the case. Last year I did from February
Hmm.
to end of March. And by beginning of April, everything was dry. This year was
Wow.
super happy to also do a couple of weeks in April.
Here it's still so cold sometimes in April that my students really they wear hats and gloves and they have a hard time taking notes during my classes because their fingers are cold. So it's funny to hear that. So, Eleni, how do you see, if you are looking ahead, what are your hopes for the future of herbalism in Greece and in Europe?
I would say what I've already said in a way, people getting closer to the land, um, conversing with the plants, conversing as living with, coexisting, being more conscious in the fact. Okay, now you asked me about herbalism, and I answer in general, like the relation of people to the plants. But
It's okay.
everything everything is two ways. I can not just ask from herbalists to have this ethic and the rest of the population like being alienated. So yeah, I would say I would like to see herbalists, because herbalism is a holistic healing modality, healing practice, healing model. Uh, so it cannot exist in a strictly capitalistic, compartmentalized context. So I would like to see herbalists that do have a connection to the land, that have built relationships with the plants, and they're advocating for the same for the people they see. Or I don't know, every time I get a little indecisive of what word to use, to say clients, patient, people. You say students. I do. I rarely call the people at the workshops the plant work students. The people, the community. So try to spread
Mhm.
this consciousness in our communities. This is my dream for the future, because I think humans are mainly extractive and very self-centered. Everything is human
Mhm.
anthropocentric in a
Mhm.
dangerous degree, destructive degree in our days. So I would like for from human beings to realize this symbiosis, this symbiotic model that needs to become the main way of relating to nature. Because
Yes,
of
I couldn't
Nikki,
agree more.
I tend to, in a word, to just call all this reciprocative approach as conversing with. because we're not really conversing like we literally converse, me and you right now, but I like this metaphorical, this picture, because it also breaks our perception of something that doesn't talk and doesn't move as something we cannot communicate with. So
Yes. Yes.
conversing with nature,
Mhm.
conversing more with nature, respecting more, living more with nature and the plants in the future. It's very important for our survival, but also for resiliency. Plants are resilient, and this is one of the biggest lessons we can take from them, but also plants do make us more resilient.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Some very important words, I think, to end this conversation. Eleni, if people want to find out more about your work, where can they find more information?
They can find me on Insta. We're preparing a site, a web page, but it's not ready yet. But through Insta, it's Officinalis Drogery, but you can find it in the link underneath this podcast. And yeah, hit me up for anything.
Okay. Yes. Lovely. I had a great time talking to you, Eleni. It was very, very interesting. Yes, really. Thank you so much for your time. Wildling, I hope you had a great time listening to this episode, and I hope to see you for the next one. And in the meantime, keep powdering your nose with dandelion pollen. Bye bye.
A warm thank you for listening, Wildie. Are you feeling a wild itch after this episode? Well, just head over to wildplantforager.com and feel free to connect with me on social media. I'm looking forward to the next episode. I hope you'll be there. But for now, just go outside and follow your wild heart.